Good afternoon. We are continuing on in our chapter 6. We are on page 110. And we are working on the back side, number 6 of that comprehension page. So we're looking at motivations for the treaties. One thing with this book series that we have is we will always be looking at all the different perspectives of people involved. They do things for different reasons, different motivations. They see things in a different way. So we're going to look at the treaties that are being signed. Who remembers what are the treaties about? James? Getting the land. The United States wants this land that we now call Minnesota because they want to expand that manifest destiny going from sea to shining sea. It's our destiny to have all this land. So they want the land for one reason. The Dakota want the land for a totally different reason, right? They've been living here for thousands of years. So we're going to look at the reasons why they signed these treaties. It's going to be different reasons. So let's listen to why the Dakota want this land. What's important?
Motivations for treaties. Land for each. Dakota. When it came to signing treaties, some Dakota felt that they really had no choice. They saw how powerful the U.S. government was and worried it would take over their lands no matter what. Treaties would allow them to reserve at least a portion of their land and control their own future. To some, establishing a reservation where the Dakota could live as they wanted was a reason to sign treaties.
So they're saying, you know what? They want all of this land. If we sign the treaty, we're going to get some of it to keep on that reservation. So we'll at least get to keep something, right? Because we want to be able to live as Dakota. We don't want to be kicked off this land and pushed somewhere else to a whole different area. At least we'll have some of our land left that was reserved for us as a reservation.
Americans. The Americans also had reasons for wanting to make treaties. Many believed their nation should expand across North America. They considered Minnesota an important part of that expansion, but they could not legally settle on American Indian lands unless treaties were signed. Alexander Ramsey set out to convince the Dakota and Ojibwe to sell their land. In a speech to the territorial legislature, Ramsey proclaimed that Minnesota was destined to become the land of American settlers.
I feel a conviction that this country, once thrown open for settlement, would be peopled with a rapidity exceeding anything in the history of Western civilization.
What does it mean when he says peopled with a rapidity? People will come, settlers will come with a rapidity. They're going to come rapidly. So this land, once we get it from the Dakota, we don't want to just come in and go to war with the Dakota to win the land. We don't want to do that. We just got done with the American Revolution, which, oh my goodness, we don't want another war, War of 1812. We don't want more war. So we're not going to come in and go to war, so we can't just take their land. We need to do these treaties. Once we do, oh my goodness, the people are going to flood to Minnesota. We all know how great Minnesota is, all the natural resources that are here. Right? They're going to come so fast, and this is going to become a new part of the United States. Now, money.
Money. Dakota. The Dakota recognized the fur trade was ending. Many of them believed that the annuities they would receive by signing treaties would allow them to buy the blankets, tools, and food necessary for survival. The Dakota elder Iamani, known to the Americans as Running Walker, was among those who believed it was necessary to deal with the U.S. government.
The Great Spirit does not smile. He growls at us. Something does not suit him. Our cornfields, where are they? Our young men cannot hunt. The powder in our rifles is wet. It will not burn. We kill no game. Nothing.
For us, who would we see the Great Spirit as? God, right? So what he's saying in our words would be, God's not happy, right? Think about the famines that happened in the Bible that we heard about, right? God's not happy. We need to make him happy. Great Spirit is growling at us. Corn's not growing. Our weapons won't work because the gunpowder is wet. We're not being able to hunt the animals like we normally do. We need to do something because Great Spirit's not happy. We have to change what we're doing. So I think we should sign this treaty. They want the money because during the fur trade, they were able to give pelts and to get those trade goods. There's no more fur trade. How are they going to get these trade goods that they depend on? The blankets and tools and food that thousands of years ago they knew how to take care of themselves, but after 150 years in that fur trade, they've come to rely on it. Right? We have cell phones now. I don't want to go back to 30 years ago when I had a phone that was a landline phone connected to the wall. The receiver had the little coil cord connected to it, and that's how I talked on the phone. I don't want to go back to that. I like my smartphone, right? I like to be able to look up. I have a question, I can look it up right away. I don't want to go backwards. Dakota were the same way. We don't know how to exist the way they did 150 years ago, when they had to make everything themselves, and they didn't have things to make their life better like we do now. We need this money, so because we don't have money, Dakota has no money. That's not part of their culture. So we need this money so we can get these trade goods. There's another piece to it.
In addition, some Dakota were in debt. They needed to pay back what they owed to the fur traders. The fur trade was not as profitable as it had been decades before. The pelts the Dakota brought to the fur traders were not worth as much as they had previously been. The money received would no longer pay for everything the Dakota needed and wanted. American traders such as Henry Sibley used their kinship ties with Dakota to pressure them into signing treaties that would help pay off those debts.
So remember, in the fall, the Dakota would go to the fur traders and say, give me some traps on credit. Give me some of these things I need to get through the winter on credit. I'm going to pay it off in the spring with all of these pelts I'm going to bring you. So they get all this stuff on credit, and then springtime comes and they have all these pelts, and the fur traders go, those pelts don't mean anything anymore. Nobody's buying them. Fur trade going away. People want their silk hats now, not the beaver hats. Right? So all of a sudden your pelts aren't worth anything. You still owe me for all this stuff you got in the fall. I don't want the pelts for it. I want something that I can use to pay off my debts. So those fur traders have money that they owe people that they were going to use the money they got for the pelts to pay it off. All of a sudden, with no fur trade, fur traders think, I don't want more pelts. That's not going to pay off my bills. I want money. So those Dakota are saying, I'm in debt. I need this money to pay off the fur traders. Fur traders want that money to pay off their bills.
Americans. The fur traders were also in debt. In past years, money from the furs brought in by the Dakota had covered the cost of goods American traders purchased. As fashions changed, the demand for furs dropped, and so did the price. In the 1830s and 1840s, Sibley and other traders were going further and further into debt. These American fur traders had several reasons for encouraging the Dakota to sign treaties. If the Dakota agreed to a treaty, they would receive an immediate cash payment. Sibley and the other traders planned to get some of this money. Then they, too, could pay off their debts. The traders also saw an opportunity to make money buying and selling land that would be available once treaties were signed.
Did the fur traders want the Dakota to sign the treaties? Yes. Yeah. Why? Why did they want them to sign the treaties, Aiden? Because they're owed money, and they owe people money, so they want that money back. Why else? Well, what did we hear at the bottom there? Why else would they want them to sign the treaties? What else was happening? So go back and reread that paragraph. Why else did they want them to sign the treaty? Not just to get that money annuity that they were, the money from the treaty that they were knew would be coming. What else could they get out of the deal? Aiden? So think about that. The Dakota owns all this land, is Dakota land. They're gonna sell all this land to go live on a reservation. All of the rest of that land outside of the reservation, are they just gonna give it to settlers? No, they're gonna say, come move to Minnesota, buy this land. So the fur traders are saying, maybe we could get in on being the people selling the land, and we could make some money off of this. So not only are they wanting the Dakota to sign it so they get the money to pay back from that cash payment that they're getting from the treaty, they're also thinking ahead, saying, there's gonna be all this land that we can sell.
Sibley was Minnesota's most powerful fur trader. He also served as Minnesota's territorial representative in Washington. He played a major role in the treaty-making process and wrote,
"The Indians are prepared to make a treaty when we tell them to do so. No treaty can be made without our claims being first secured."
No treaty can be made without our claims being first secured. We need to make sure we're taken care of. We owe money, they owe us money. We need to make sure that is taken care of. If it's not a uniform sweatshirt, you can't wear it. You know, that's spirit wear. That's not uniform.
Lifestyle. Dakota. The Dakota could see their homeland changing. Newcomers were arriving to the region in large numbers, bringing with them a different way of life. Unlike the fur traders, these people wanted to settle. Some Dakota saw treaties as a way to preserve some of their land. They believed having a reservation would provide them a place to continue their traditional lifestyle. It would be land that newcomers could not settle on or control. It would be Dakota land forever.
So remember how the Dakota and the Ojibwe lived is different than how the Europeans lived, right? They shared everything. They didn't say, this is my yard, I'm gonna put a fence up, this is only for me. They had, the whole area was for the Dakota, and they lived in community. So they're saying all these people coming into this Minnesota land that we're in, they're changing stuff. And you know what? We want to live how we've lived for thousands of years. So if we did our reservation, we can keep our culture alive. We don't have to live how they're living. We want our culture to stay around. So let's do it so we can keep our lifestyle, keep our culture that we're used to.
Americans. Most Americans believe the Dakota should adopt European American ways. The government planned to use some of the annuity payments from treaties to teach the Dakota new skills and ways of life. Often this was achieved through the work of missionaries, who also encouraged the Dakota to accept Christianity instead of their traditional religion. The missionaries also wanted the treaties to include plans to teach the Dakota to farm like the American newcomers. Missionary Stephen Riggs wrote of the Dakota's close-knit communities.
Disintegrate them. Encourage them to be thrifty farmers rather than poor villagers.
This plan to make the Dakota stop being Dakota and adopt American ways was called assimilation. It was designed to teach the Dakota how to live in a world that was dominated by American ways of life. Many Americans did not realize how devastating this change would be to the Dakota.
So think about that. What does assimilation mean? It's one of our key terms. What is assimilation? More than just James should know. What is assimilation? Harper.
Adopting the values and habits of a wealthy group.
adopting the habits and values of the larger group. Who's the larger group, the Dakota or the United States? United States, right? That's the larger group. United States is coming in, these Americans are coming in saying, hey, we live differently than how you live. You should live our way. You should assimilate and change to live the way that we are living. Are they doing this to be mean? What do you think? Are they coming in and saying, we're gonna get you, change your ways because we're meanies? No, they're coming in saying, you have your way of living, we have our way of living. Our way's better. Is the United States way of living better than the Dakota way of living? What do you think? Why not, Michael? The Dakota are saying, we've lived this way for thousands of years. This is who we are. We're happy living how we live. This works for us. We like this lifestyle. We want to hold on to this lifestyle. We want our culture. We're good. Thanks very much, but we are good. And the Americans are saying, but our way's better. You're poor villagers. You barely have anything. You don't have money. You share everything. We're so used to wanting to that higher social status, wanting to move up that ladder, have more than what our parents have, gaining that money. You don't have anything. How is that any good? They didn't understand that it's okay to live differently. That two different things can both be okay. The Americans were saying, our way's better. Don't you want what we have? We want you to have what we have. We want you to assimilate so you can become farmers and you can get money and you can have a better life. We want you to be like us so you can have more. They did not realize how devastating this would be to the Dakota. This is why we study history. We learn from our past so we don't make the same mistakes. They thought they were doing what was right. They thought assimilation was a good thing. Based on the words that we just read, is assimilation going to be a good thing? No. Right? It's devastating. Making the American Indians change how they've lived for thousands of years is going to bring some devastating results. They learn from that, right? We don't still keep doing the same things that we've been doing. We've changed, right? The United States has changed. We're going to see those changes throughout time and how we've learned from the past. But we have to learn about the yucky stuff that happened first, before we learned. It's easy to look back on it now and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe they were acting that way. Well, they didn't know. They didn't know what was going to happen. When we look back, we know what happens. So right now, they think they're doing what's right. They think they're helping the poor and vulnerable. Right? That's one of our Catholic social teachings. They think they're following that. We're going to learn how that's not true. So we have the Treaty of Traverse des Sioux. So on that number 6, you just have to circle which perspective was the reason for signing the treaties. Was it the Dakota or was it the European American officials? So you just have to circle who had what reasoning. So now we're on to number 7. Summarize the events that took place on the first day and the last day of the Treaty of Traverse des Sioux. So right now we've got the build-up. We're going to get to the first day, July 18th. We're not there yet. So just listen to the build-up of what was happening before they got together for the treaty signing.
The Treaty of Traverse des Sioux. In 1851, the United States met with 2 different groups of Dakota to negotiate or discuss 2 treaties. The first meeting was at a place called Traverse des Sioux. Here, the U.S. officials met with leaders of the Sisseton and Wahpeton bands of the Dakota Nation. The second meeting took place 2 weeks later at Mendota. This one was with the Mdewakanton and Wahpekute bands of the Dakota Nation. Looking at the process of negotiating a treaty can help us understand the story better. Here's what happened at Traverse des Sioux. Summer 1851. The steamboat Excelsior carries a group of Americans, including Alexander Ramsey and Henry Sibley, up the Minnesota River to Traverse des Sioux. Waiting at the landing are hundreds of Dakota who have traveled from near and far to meet them. The crowd also includes a small group of missionaries, Stephen Riggs among them, who live in the area. Everyone is there to make a treaty.
So think about that. There's a small delegation of the United States. Think about the elections that we just had a month ago. Adults were voting for who's going to be president, who's going to be the senator, who's going to be in the legislature. We elect people to be our voice. They're going to speak for us, right? When the government is making a new law, or they're looking at all the different stuff that the government looks at, we don't all get together and say, well, this is my thoughts on it, and I'm not talking with the president saying, this is how I feel. I know that I can let my legislator know, I can let my senator know, and they will bring that to Washington, D.C., right? So we elect people to speak for us, to be our voice. The Dakota, there's hundreds of them waiting for the United States officials to come, because the Dakota have a different leadership style. They say, okay, we have our elders that we respect and listen to, but we all have a say, and we're all going to talk amongst each other. So think about the Dakota. There's this many Dakota. The United States, there's a lot more, right? The United States is huge. A few hundred people talking amongst each other is a lot easier than thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions now, all trying to get their voices heard. We couldn't live the same way that the Dakota lived. They could get together and just have their groups all be heard in one big setting. It's not going to work for the United States. So they're coming into the process two very different ways. The Dakota are used to everybody getting together and talking and getting their voices heard, whereas the United States is used to, hey, we elected these people, they're the ones making the decisions, they're speaking for us. So it's a small group. It's going to cause problems that they come at it from two different ways. July 18th, the first day. So we can see there's a whole paragraph, but on our paper, there's enough room for one, maybe two sentences. So we're going to listen to this paragraph, and then we're going to summarize it. Put it into your own words. You are not writing word for word what's in the book. Okay? I don't want that whole paragraph written down. I want a summary. Tell me in one sentence what happened. Okay, so listen to what's happening on this first day.
July 18th, 1851. After waiting a few weeks for everyone to arrive, the Treaty-Making Council officially gets down to business. Alexander Ramsey leads the U.S. delegation, a group of people who represent the U.S. government. He welcomes the gathered elders of the Dakota Nation's Sisseton and Wahpeton bands. He tells them that the U.S. president has heard that the Dakota are poor and hungry. He says the president is anxious that something should be done to mend your condition. He proposes that the Dakota accept money and goods for some of their land. Not all of their leaders have arrived yet, so Dakota elders choose not to speak or ask questions. The council adjourns for the day.
So think about the U.S. officials coming in. Hey, we're all here. All right, let's get going. We want this land. We want this to happen. You got hundreds of people here. We've got our group here. Let's get going. This is what we're thinking that you should get for this land that we get. What did the Dakota say? They didn't say anything. Why not, Natalie?
Because not everybody's there.
Not everybody's there. They looked at him and went, no. And they went back. We're not ready to talk to you yet. We've got time. We're not ready. We're going to wait. How do you think that's going to go over with the U.S. officials that are saying, yeah, we want this land. This land is awesome. We want it to be ours so we can populate it and grow the United States. James? It's not going to be good. They're coming at it from two different perspectives.
July 19, 1851. An elder named Starface, or Wichangpi Ite, is the first Dakota to speak to the council. He tells the U.S. delegation that he would rather not make a treaty until all the young men of his band arrive at Traverse des Sioux.
Can't make a treaty yet. I need to have everybody here so we can all talk and come to an agreement. We're not ready. I didn't think that's gonna go over with the U.S. But, right, come on, let's go. We want the land so we can grow and, what do you mean? There's hundreds of you here. Come on, get a move on. Let's get this settled.
Another elder, Sleepy Eye, or Ishtaba, also seems reluctant.
You're coming and asking me for my country makes me sad. And you're saying I am not able to do anything with my country makes me still more sad. Those who are coming behind are my near relatives, and I expected to see them here. That is all I have to say.
When he says my country, what is he talking about, Robbie? The land. Saying that I can't do anything with my land makes me sad. You're asking for my land. This is where we have lived for thousands of years. This is making me very sad. The U.S. is excited. Oh, we want this land. This land is awesome. We want to grow the United States. They're not understanding what a big deal this is for the Dakota. They're saying, what? We're going to give you a reservation. We're going to give you annuities and money. It's all good. And the Dakota are saying, oh, hold on. Not all good. This is actually really bad for us. You're wanting us to give this all up. So the United States isn't understanding just how big of a deal this is for the Dakota.
As Sleepy Eye and the other Dakota elders leave the council, Ramsey threatens to stop all negotiations. Later, after the tension has cooled, both sides agree to meet again after a one-day recess.
The United States is starting to get upset. Come on, we're here, let's make the decision. And the elders are saying, we're not all here. This is a really, really big decision. No. And so tempers are flaring. They're getting upset, so they take a one-day recess, say, okay, we're gonna go, we're gonna calm down, hopefully the rest of your people come, we'll come back and give it a fresh start today.
The Treaty Makers. Early in the discussions at Traverse des Sioux, negotiators on both sides asked an important question. Who would speak for the Dakota? Several elders participated in the negotiations, but they all insisted on consulting with their people before making any final decisions. On the second day, Dakota elder Starface, or Wichangpi Ite, told Alexander Ramsey that he wanted to wait for a group of young men from his band to arrive.
My thoughts are turned toward my young men who are behind, and I should be glad if you thought the same way. On looking around yesterday, you said you were glad to meet and shake hands with us. But I'm sorry you are not willing to wait and shake hands with those who are behind.
We all have a say. We want everybody's voice to be heard. Makes me sad that you're not willing to wait for these people. Come on. It's just another couple of days. Please wait.
In response, Ramsey insisted that the Dakota elders who were participating in the negotiations were perfectly capable of making decisions on their own.
Young men and old men of other bands are here and have been for some time. We suppose they are anxious as we are to get through and return to their families. You who are here are men and chiefs, and you should just take hold of this business like men and arrange it at once.
We all want to get home. The American officials, American Indians, everybody just wants to get home. There's enough of you here. You're the elders. Make the decision. You know what your people are thinking. Make the decisions for them. This is what we do. Come on, let's get moving on this. Not understanding they have a whole different style of making decisions.
Over the next few days, the Dakota elders met regularly with each other and with members of their own bands. They did not sign the treaty until they were satisfied that most of their people agreed with the terms.
July 21st, not the last day yet.
July 21st, 1851. Another Dakota elder, Extended Tail Feathers, or Upi Iyachadeya, tells the council that his people want the government to make an offer in writing.
When those sitting around here have seen this paper, had it explained to them, and talked it over among themselves, we will let you know our opinion in regard to it.
Ramsey agrees and the council adjourns.
So the American Indians, remember, have an oral history. They don't write down their language. So they're saying, we don't want this just talked about because people can change what they're saying. We want it written down. So even though I might not be able to read it, I know that maybe one of my interpreters can read it and be able to say, this is what you agreed to. We want to make sure that you stay with what you promised us, that we get everything that you say. So Ramsey says, sure, we can write it down. Makes sense.
July 22nd, 1851. The Dakota spend the morning considering the offer that Ramsey wrote the night before. Stephen Riggs and other interpreters move among the Dakota camps, translating the document. Henry Sibley and his fellow fur traders are busy trying to convince reluctant Dakota to sign. In the afternoon, a Dakota delegation hands back the document and promises to sign if certain changes are made.
All right, so it's being passed around, it's being explained to them. We want these changes made. Okay, we'll make those changes and we'll get to sign it tomorrow. So now we're on July 23rd, the last day of the treaty agreements. This is another one where we need to listen to the whole thing. It's not just this little bit, it's a whole nother paragraph. So we're gonna listen to all of it and you're gonna summarize what happens.
July 23rd, 1851. The Dakota elders continue to voice their concerns about the treaty. Sleepy Eye demands that the Dakota be given a copy to keep so they can tell whether the government is keeping its promises. Starface says he hopes the government will not try to change the treaty after it is signed.
Do they trust the U.S. government? No. They're saying, we want this written down so we can make sure that you are keeping your promises. We hope you don't change anything, but we want it written down. Now really listen to what happens when they sign the agreement.
Ramsey and another U.S. official sign the treaty. The time to decide has arrived. Despite their many concerns, the Dakota elders come forward to sign one by one. First, they sign 2 copies of the treaty. Then, Stephen Riggs guides them to another table where they sign another document. Most of the Dakota seem to think they are signing a 3rd copy of the treaty. In fact, they are signing a document that says they will pay back the fur traders with treaty money. Extended Tail Feathers says he suspects the Dakota will never see much of the money promised them under the treaty.
You think it a great deal you are given for this country? I don't think so. For both our lands and all we get for them will at last belong to the white man. The money comes to us, but will all go to the white man who trade with us.
So the Dakota were saying, we want our own copy of this treaty. So they know they're going to be signing multiple copies of the treaty that's been broken down and explained to them. And then there's some kind of miscommunication that happens. I don't know, based on this, and I wasn't there, I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's honest miscommunication that happens because of the language barrier. But the Dakota went and signed this paper, which was a copy of the treaty. Then they signed this paper, which was another copy of the treaty, because they wanted multiple copies so everybody could have their copy. And then they went and signed this piece of paper, which they thought was another copy of the treaty. They're like, okay, sign, okay, sign, okay, sign. They didn't do their due diligence and say, wait a minute, this looks different than this. I might not be able to read it, but I can see that it looks different. They can't read, so they didn't know the differences that were on there. They just assumed treaty, 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 I'm just signing it off. What was that 3rd piece of paper? Alan?
It was like something where
So remember, in the treaty, they're getting reservation land, they're getting annuities, and they're getting money. So that third piece of paper said that money that you get is gonna go directly to the fur traders, who you owe, you're in debt to them, they're in debt to people, your money is gonna go to them. What were the Dakota thinking they would use that money for? Who remembers? What did they think they were gonna use that money for, Aiden? Food and trade goods that they've come to depend on in the fur trade. So they're thinking, we're gonna get this money and we're gonna use it for all this stuff. All of a sudden, that third piece of paper says, nope, that money's going to the fur traders. Uh-oh. Not what they expected. So the Dakota are saying, you cheated us. We didn't agree to this. The US officials are saying, you signed it. Did you not know what you were signing? I mean, you signed the paper. So there's this miscommunication that happens. A lot of people will tell me, oh, they were tricked. Were they? Or, I mean, some people might say that I wasn't there. Was it a trick? Was it an honest mistake? I don't know. I like to think the best of people and say that the US officials thought they understood it. Okay, that's what I like to think. Could it have been trickery? It could have, we don't know. But for whatever reason, the Dakota signed that third piece of paper that said the money was gonna go straight to the fur traders, not what the Dakota thought was going to happen. So you need to summarize that into one sentence. So you should be done with questions 6 and 7. So the whole front side of the comprehension page and half of that back side. And we're gonna start off the next time we meet talking about the Treaty of Dakota and that yellow page that is next. Harper? That's fine. 1 to 2 sentences. Just don't copy that paragraph. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.